Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Diana and today I wanted to talk about this movie that I saw today. I went to the theaters to watch Obsession. You might have heard of it, you probably have. It's definitely been becoming very popular as of recent for a lot of good reasons. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about it, my initial thoughts, and just like an overall perspective. Before we move on, I want to give a little bit of a disclaimer because I don't really like watching movies that much. If I'm gonna be honest, I am not a big movie connoisseur, and I guess for that reason, I don't really know much of what a good movie entails. Obviously, I'm trying to broaden my horizons, so if you have any suggestions, make sure to let me know. But yeah, that's why just take my opinion with a grain of salt, because this is just my thoughts, nothing more. But yes, also another disclaimer, there's probably going to be spoilers in here, so if you haven't seen it, go ahead and go see it because it is really good and I feel like you're gonna love it. Okay, without further ado, let's get straight into the video. So, okay, first thoughts. I think that the hype surrounding the film is justified. So, Obsession as a film, as a, what would it be, like a horror film? Is that in that genre, a horror film? As a horror film, it works very well because it shows us how, what I believe at least, fear extends beyond many levels. And I know that's such a surface level thought. This is not me trying to be like fake deep or like intellectually, no. But at least from my perspective, because I am someone who is kind of repulsed by horror films. I really don't like horror. Anything, especially if it's shock value. I can't watch gory stuff. I don't like horror a lot because, like I said, it relies a lot on that shock value, making you feel really scared, really disgusted. Often it's more disgusted than scared. But yes, overall, I'm not very attracted to the horror genre in that aspect, which is why I think Obsession was such a breath of fresh air, because on the surface, it might seem like the horror part is the situation that the main character, Bear, is stuck in. I'm not going to give a lot of context because I assume if you're watching this, you've probably seen the movie or have a general idea of what the movie talks about. But Bear is kind of like, I think he's a representation of the nice guy, kind of incel-y trope that exists nowadays. And I say trope, but I don't mean only within media. I'm also talking about this new resurgence of a lot of guys that kind of are labeling themselves in this way. Not saying that Bear himself has associated himself with this group of people, but he does give characteristics of that, and I think the director does that intentionally. So, right on the surface, and I think this is the wonderful appeal of the movie, it seems like he's the protagonist that we should sympathize with. We should sympathize. I was gonna say synthesize. No, we should sympathize with. Because we come to learn a lot about his loneliness, his difficult life, his experiences, we view things a lot in his view, where to a certain degree it makes sense to sympathize with him. But that's only where the story starts, not where it ends. The true horror of obsession is not the horror that the characters in Bear were enduring by the end of the girlfriend Nikki and her obsessive traits, but rather Bear's own attitude towards Nikki, towards other people, towards like women as a whole. Because like I said, I see the parallels and I see how this can definitely also be seen as like a representation of something bigger. And I do believe that the director does a really good job at portraying these issues. Because I was talking with my friends and they brought up a really funny point, because we were in the movie theaters and obviously there were a lot of couples because it's the movie theaters and it makes sense. And throughout this film, there was a lot of giggling, a lot of laughing that was going on, which, like I said again, I think in many ways is fine, because it is kind of a funny film in some aspects. You know, it learns how to take itself seriously, but it also learns to have that comedic relief, which also makes it quite enjoyable. But sometimes the way that some of the audience members would laugh or giggle at the most serious parts, or at like the climax, and moments where you think, just what are you laughing about? Like, I think it's kind of funny the way that they were laughing and nothing, right? And we were talking about how this ultimately has to do with how a lot of people view this movie within a satirical lens. The satirical lens where they say, haha, babe, that's so you. That is how you act. Right? And I think when you take that into perspective and the types of people that are going to be consuming this film, you see really the mastery of the film. Because, at least to me, the way that the director portrayed these issues, it was very clear cut. Obviously not in an obvious way, but in a nuanced way. I felt like the director did a wonderful job at keeping things focused, right? Every single detail that was added in, like any good film, had a meaning and it had a purpose. So I just think it's a little bit ironic how a lot of people are going to walk out of the movie, despite the fact that I think that the movie lays it very clear. They're gonna walk out completely missing the whole point. The whole point of what the true psychological horror within the film is. Nikki is not the element of true horror. Bear is. His cowardice. I love that detail near the end, where Bear knows what he has to do. Sorry, my screen is glitching so much. Bear knows what he has to do. He knows at this point, and he's been knowing for a while, that the only way to make up for his mistake and free Nikki is to kill himself. Yet even within those moments that he has the gun, it's loaded. He can't do it. He brings it up to his mouth. He can't do it. From start to end, the director is showing us how Bear is a coward. He is a coward, right? And that's what I also like. It's not like we're getting a glamorized version of Bear, no. Obviously, in this situation, sure, he might be a victim to some of Nikki's behaviors, but like, whose fault is that in the end? In reality, he has no one to blame but himself. And this really shows how I think within society, the blame is often shifted and not in the best way, especially within relationships. And I really kind of enjoyed this nuance aspect because it showed us just how easy it is to villainize the woman in the situation without knowing the full story. I believe fully, right? Had Bear been honest with his intentions, had he not done what he done, had he not seen Nikki, but here's the thing. I feel like the way that he sees Nikki and he treats women as a whole overall was not very healthy. So it's like, then again, even if I believe that Nikki would have given Bear a chance, the fault is within his own character. And it's kind of this belief that Nikki owes him something. Even if he doesn't explicitly say it, his actions show that he feels like Nikki owes him something, which is why it's so hard for him to do what is right because of his own cowardice as well. You know, even once he knows, because he understands the gravity of the situation. I mean, if your girlfriend is feeding you your dead cat, like, man, like, how do you rationalize that in your head? You're there because you want to be, you know, and he just kept trying to salvage the situation, salvage it. And yeah, I think for me, probably the most terrifying part of the film was when Nikki came out for a bit, the real Nikki came out for a bit at night, and she said, you know, like, kill me, like, free me from my misery. And Bear was like, he said something like, what's so wrong with being with me? Like, that showed me how the true villain, obviously, you know, I say obviously because this is not like it's a deep thought, but true villain was Bear. He's the victim of his own actions. The true villain was Bear, and that's the worst part. He fails to see the failure in his ways because he somehow feels victimized. Even though the real Nikki has been through hell and back, she lost her autonomy and she sees everything that is happening, but she lost her autonomy. Yet somehow Bear finds a way to make it about him. That is all for today. Definitely just a couple thoughts that I have. I thought the film was very great. Like I said again, I really don't like horror films, thrillers, anything scary. I kind of stay away from, but I really like that aspect, and I hope that if you do end up watching it, or if you already watched it, I hope you enjoyed it as well. I thought it was really great, and overall I'm just excited of this new these directors that are coming out, you know, these younger directors that are really bringing in these new refreshing perspectives. I think the industry needs much more of that, and if we see much more of that, then I probably might have to tune into some more horror films. But I hope you enjoyed. Please comment down below anything else that you want me to talk about, any other movies that I should maybe see, and yeah, we'll get to that next time. Alright, have a good night. Oh wait, that's not how you do it.